Hello, everyone, and welcome to Let's Write an Adventure, our ongoing live stream where we are creating a D&D campaign in real time, focusing on building out our own domain of dread. I'm RJ Kerr, and I'm your host, as always. Forgive my voice today. I've been a little under the weather coming out of my vacation last week, and so I've got the proverbial frog in the throat right now. So hopefully you can understand everything I'm saying. I don't sound too much like I'm dying. All right. So last time we were spending a little bit of effort working on building out um, the artifact at the center of our domain of dread. Now, if you're just joining us, this is a domain of dread in which the characters find themselves that is a takes place in around an inland sea, full of storms and ghost ships and all sorts of fun and nautical stuff. And so far, we've built out the first adventure that the characters will have there, where they are kidnapped and enslaved briefly, and then they've got to escape. And in doing so, they discover the existence of this artifact that might be their key to getting out of the domain of dread. We've also done a lot of work building out the first settlement that the characters encounter, a place that we're calling Darkport, and sort of the shanty town seafaring vibe that it has there. And now we're working on building out some of the other adventures. And this is where things get a little more freeform. And so we've taken a tact where we are stepping out of doing this in a linear sort of succession here. We're not moving out of chronological order and moving into um, building out a few things, a few key points, little I want to call them plot points, but like little uh, we'll call them signposts, things that we know are important and are going to be important to the adventure and to the story. And so building those out ahead of time so that we kind of know where we're driving at as we move forward in building out some of the adventure. Because we are building these for players, and players are going to have a lot of agency as we go through this, and there's a lot of opportunity for them to kind of rearrange things. And so we're coming up with these nodes, these little signposts that indicate that are things that we know are going to matter. No matter what the characters do, are going to be important to the story because the characters are going to need them to be important to the story. Um, and so we're working on those. One of those is the artifact. Now, the artifact is this, this. Well, we went into it with not much idea of what it was, other than to say that it was a thing of power that gave the wielder of it the ability to control this domain of dread, i.e., allowing the characters to escape. And they would also discover later on, we had determined that they would have the opportunity to destroy the domain of dread entirely and therefore seal the evil in it away forever, or open it up and release all of the innocent people that are trapped in there as well, but potentially release the evil inside into the material plane. So we came into it knowing that it was going to be that kind of a, um, a Pandora's box, if you will. It was going to give them the power they need to escape, but it also was going to give them this dilemma, this choice that they have to make. But we needed to know more than that. And so last week, let me share my screen here. We spent some time brainstorming um, about the artifact itself. And we were talking about um, what is the artifact? How will the characters use the artifact? Where are they going to find it? And then how are they going to go about finding it as well? Kind of our key questions to answer here, right? And so we decided that the artifact was a power source that fuels the machinery of the spire, and this is a central spire that kind of juts up out of the inland sea. Um, but the fuels the machinery of the spire's arcane engine, and then it glows with a fiery orange light that puts out no heat. And then visually, it's a slowly rotating ball of pure power contained within a cylindrical cage made of mithril and polished crystal glass. And so, I likened it to sort of a tesseract kind of feel. It's a power source, um, and we chose that because the idea was that the characters would find it about halfway through this campaign. And huzzah, congratulations, they have it. Well, now they've got to do something with it. And then the next half of the campaign is about them moving towards being able to complete the ritual that gives them the power of this artifact, that gives them the full power of this artifact. Um, we wanted to make it more than just a MacGuffin, more than something they go, oh, we got it, now let's stick it in a bag of holding and never take it out for any reason whatsoever. Um, and so instead, we gave it some power as well, effectively allowing it to regenerate spell slots for our spellcasters in the party there. Um, a certain number of them per day. I think we settled on 1d4 plus 2 once per day. So sort of kind of like an arcane recovery kind of ability here, but that it would be used could be used by any spellcaster, as it is a source of magical power. We also talked about it being part of a larger ritual, like I said, and so that it has this, so finding it isn't sort of the end of the adventure. It could lead up. We could feel like it's the end, like the characters, the players might think that it's going to be the end, and they discover the artifact and realize that there's still more to do. Um, we did not sketch out much more about the ritual itself, and I don't know that we necessarily need to just yet, as that'll kind of take place towards the climax of our campaign. Um, and then we got into where the artifact is, and here we were brainstorming the idea of it, um, sort of being lost to history as far as history of this world goes, and that it dwells at the bottom of the inland sea within the ruins of a cloistered order of mages that was destroyed and flooded during the cataclysm that formed this domain of dread. And so we kind of have this idea of a location and where we're going to find it, and that is going to merit some fleshing out. We're going to want to spend more time on that location. It's going to become an adventure site that will be important. Another node, another important signpost place that the characters are gonna come to at some point because they need to, one way or the other, and so we can flesh that out, and really kind of build that out into a dungeon kind of environment. Um, and play around with some cool stuff there. Since it's completely submerged, it's entirely underwater. It kind of gives us some different vibes. And since there were living people that died in there, we get some cool maybe magic and undead themes going on in there, and so we can really make it a fun place, which is really the point, right? Um, and where the characters might have to search, and so that's something that we'll build out uh, in due time. And then we talked kind of a little bit about how they would go about finding it. And we settled on the idea that this would be a uh, a mystery of sorts. So we use a mystery structure to go along with this, and specifically the five node structure, which we'll talk more about here today. Um, Now that being said, the five node structure is just sort of a basic kind of structure you can apply to any sort of mystery or knowledge gathering sort of apparatus, and so it's still going to take some building out for us to kind of come up with how this is going to work, and we're going to build it out well beyond five nodes. I think we're going to add a lot of layer and nuance to it, so that it becomes kind of a twisty, turny, intricate mystery that feels really satisfying. It isn't just oh, we found the clues and now we know the answer, in a short matter of time, but also isn't a big fetch quest, right? To go find 12 shards of the ancient sphere and put them all together and then get the answer, right? We want this to be something that feels a little more like a thriller, I think. Um, and so we're going to be working on that today. Um, the only other thing that we may jump around on a little bit, I think, is we might talk about Evander. the elemental villain that kind of rules over this domain of dread, because they will become important at certain as this adventure progresses, and we're going to want to know more about them, um, so that we know when they become important. But we may or may not work on them today. We'll see. As always, this is a collaborative, thing. So please jump in with your comments, your suggestions, your thoughts, your criticisms, your questions, all that kind of stuff. Let's make this a dialogue. It has been so far and has come. I think some of the best stuff in this campaign has come out of the conversations I've had with you all in the chat. So please, please, please feel free to jump in with your own thoughts. So, with that in mind, let's go ahead and get started. So, um, let me scroll up a little bit here so you can kind of actually see what I'm talking about, and um, even with my little image up in the upper corner there, my little video feed. So, we've been using a story circle structure here, which is a take on the hero's journey, um, and is a pretty strong universal structure for telling a long format story, um, because it well, frankly, it just works. It is how most stories are structured, and so it lends itself really really well. And before we get into the TTRPGs aren't about telling a fixed story. You're right; they aren't about telling a plotted story. But they're still telling a story. And even though there's going to be a lot of player agency, and the characters have infinite amount of choice, where they can go in any which way in this world they want to do, you'll find that they still end up following this structure in a lot of cases, and so we can build out to it. Now, that being said, sort of, since we're don't actually have players for this. We're not running this as a campaign at the moment and not building it in real time. There's a lot of stuff in here that we would build out that you might not spend the time doing in real life because, well, you don't need to. Your characters go left, so you don't need to build out the path that goes right. That kind of thing. But we're going to build it all out because we've got infinite time, and it's just kind of fun to dig into this. So we built out the need, and so right now we're talking about the go and search. The find is where they get the actual artifact itself, and so that's going to be kind of another dungeon crawly kind of adventure. Need was a dungeon crawl kind of adventure, but we're going to have several other smaller adventures and investigations going on in the go and search area here. And for our purposes, go is kind of where the players get to start kind of making their own path. We thrust the adventure on them in need, with things happening to them. They got kidnapped, right? They didn't set that into action. NPCs set that into action. Um, and then they had to react to that. Well, now it's their turn to send the dominoes flying and to begin their investigation and go searching around and finding what they need. And so this is where we're going to build out the majority of our nodes. Now, search is where things are going to start to get more complicated, and that's where we'll build in some complications, um, building in things from our other factions and opposition who also are searching for this artifact, because of course the characters aren't the only ones. So let's go ahead and start building out some of our structure to get going here, and then we'll do some brainstorming. So let's do. We're gonna go with the initial. We're gonna kind of do this in a layered way, and it would be easier if I could kind of graphically represent this to you to kind of show how all of these things connect. But we're going to do it in an outline format because there's just not a good way to graphically show that here in Notion. Now, that being said, if you want to learn more about this format, I highly recommend checking out So You Want to Be a Game Master by Justin Alexander. I am in no way affiliated with this book, nor do I get anything if you get it. It's just a really good resource, and I highly recommend it for whatever kind of level of DM or GM you are in whatever game system you're running. It's a really strong foundational work to really set you up for success. Highly, highly recommend. But he talks a lot about the 5 node structure for mysteries in there. And so we're going to be building off of that. So let's start with our outline format here. So let's say we're going to go with a heading, and we're going to say a initial scene. And I'm going to call these scenes just for our just is a for our own nomenclature for this. Um, some of them might be dungeon crawls, some of them might be social encounters, some of them might be combat encounters, some of them might be heists. Who knows what it's going to be? But we're just going to use scene here for our initial terminology to know that they're going to be short sections of the adventure, of the overall adventure. And so the initial scene is where our characters follow their first lead. So this is the first lead that they get, and this is where they go, and it is going to have within it at least 3 clues. And so we're going to say 2, and we're going to say clues, and we'll have clue 1, TBD, clue 2, TBD, clue 3, TBD. All right. And from here, these clues are going to lead to other scenes, other investigative scenes. And so we're going to say, you know what? We're going to call this our primary scene, is what we're going to call it here, our primary scene, because we're going to call these our secondary scenes. And secondary scenes are going to have, there's going to be at least 3 of them, right? Because we've got 3 clues, 1 pointing to each of these secondaries. So we're going to say, heading 2, we're going to say B1, secondary scene, TBD, we're going to say clues, say TBD, TBD, TBD. So 3 clues per scene. Each clue leading to a different scene is kind of the vibe for this, right? And so let's go ahead and keep building this out. All right. So we're going to have B2 and B3. Right? So these are going to be our secondary scenes. There's 3 of them. Clues from our primary scenes lead to each one of these. Each of these has clues that lead to the other ones and then leads to somewhere else in our tertiary scenes. So that's going to be our next layer here. Now, if we were doing a strictly 5-node structure, there would just be one, there would be our conclusion would come at the end of this here. So we'd have, the first crime scene, and then there'd be clues, and there'd be investigative scenes, and those would all have more clues of their own that lead to each other and then also lead to the solution, which would be the final and 5th node. But we're going to make ours a little more complicated than that. We're going to add several other layers to it at least. And so we're going to start with at least 2 layers, and then we'll kind of get into the brainstorming of how we're going to do this. So what we're building out now is C, our tertiary scenes. And that is going to be a heading 2, say C1, just kind of repeating the process here. TBD, clues. And the key here is that, yes, this is redundant, and it's redundant for a reason. We want this redundancy because we don't want we don't want to end up in a situation where the players end up, at a dead end where they have been where they've been, following the clues and they miss one vital clue, and now they can't move forward. So we've got lots of vital clues. We do everything in triplicate because they're unlikely to miss all three of them. And even if they do miss all three of them, they have the opportunity to come back and find at least one of those three, potentially, and reinvestigate one of these scenes. But allowing these things to also all connect to each other means that we're giving the players the agency to kind of choose their own adventure, really, to kind of navigate their own path as they go through this. They can jump between scenes. They can go left instead of where we think they might have gone right normally. They can choose option C instead of option B. They can jump around. They can investigate, start investigating a secondary scene and then jump right into investigating tertiary scenes, and then come back to secondary scenes and cover all that ground in a very zigzaggy kind of pattern. And it gives them a playground of places to for their characters to investigate and to play and to check out and to have these encounters and to look for clues and information, that gives them all kinds of choice, and yet still provides us a structure that we can have planned in advance, so we're not having to think of everything up on the fly and hope that it all kind of meshes together. So we've got that, and then we have got our solution. So ABCD, heading D, solution scene. All right, and then the solution scene does not have any clues. The solution scene is the big reveal where they get the answers that they're looking for. And frankly, in this case, it's going to take them to the find, because we're going to fill out search with a whole bunch of problems, things that get interjected into this, and stumble them up along the way. At least I think we're going to. We may change that up and add another layer or two of these scenes to search, as we go. We'll see how many different ideas we come up with as we are building this out. Okay, so we've got our basic outline kind of put together here, and so we kind of have the nodes for what we know we want to fill out, at least, right? And so we know we've got 2 layers of investigation and a primary, so we're looking at 7 different, investigative scenes. So let's go ahead and start thinking about this. Let's get a brainstorming page going. And this is our go brainstorming. All right. Okay, so as with all brainstorming, let's start with what we know. We know that the artifact is lost at the bottom of the inland sea, a sea that's going to need a name at some point here. We're going to need to call it something. At the bottom of the inland sea, within the ruins of a cloistered order of mages. We're thinking it has heavy nautical and magical vibes to it. Cool. Not necessarily relevant to what we're doing at the moment here, but always good to kind of re-engage with what you know, and because we're going to be working our way backwards from here, right? If we're trying to figure out how to get the characters to this spot, how are they going to find clues that get them here? We're going to have to think about where they need to end up and kind of work our way backwards from it. The same process works if you're ever planning a murder mystery. You know, think of the solution first. How did the murder actually happen? And then and then go from there. You sort of work your way backwards. It's easier to come up with clues once you know what happened, as opposed to invent clues and then fit a solution to find a solution to fit those clues. Jonathan Frost asked, "Have you established how deep the inland sea is?" No, I haven't, and this is something I've been looking forward to, because, as some of you may or may not know, I spent about 10 years as a professional diver. I love the underwater world, and I am just fascinated by our oceans, and so uh, I really kind of want it to be deep, like real deep, like lightlessly deep. Um, but kind of get out of the tropics, out of the reefs. Certainly have some of those zones in there where we could have light filtering down through, and coral creatures and what have you. Um, but I kind of want, if this is going to be at the bottom, I want it to be dark and spooky. I mean, what do you guys think about that? What are your thoughts? Should we should our find dungeon crawl be in a bright light, bright light ruins in a sort of a shattered reef, or should we go uh, creepy crawly creatures at the bottom of the abyssal plain kind of stuff? Um, let's see here. Jonathan says the sea drowned, the order of mages, something that has to do with inundation and depths. Yeah, so my kind of thought on this was that, like, if we go back way to our initial kind of brainstorming on this, was that there wasn't a sea here originally. That it was, that it was effectively kind of a bowl canyon kind of deal, enormous, maybe a impact site from a crater or what have you, but that it was dry, and that it effectively became filled up with all of these civilizations, all of these villages and towns and what have you from the civilization uh, of this particular kingdom, centered around this towering spire in the middle, um, and uh, and that when the cataclysm came, it flooded everything and turned all of this into an inland sea. Um, and so we have, lots of things at the bottom here that shouldn't be underwater, and that kind of deal. Um, if you're talking about something to do with inundation and depths for the naming of the sea, I like inundation. That's one of my favorite words. Um, um, I just think it has a cool sound to it there. We could go with something along those lines. Um, let's see here. Jonathan says, if there is a light at the ruins that beckons the players, it should be swallowed by the depths until they get close. The sorrow, the drowned, or something. Yeah. Yeah, the drowning sea, the um, sea of lost sorrows, something along those lines. Um, yeah. So with that, your comment there about light in the ruins, that's something else that I really like about making it particularly deep, right? Is that you get things like anglerfish in the deep ocean that have the little bioluminescent kind of lures that they stick out there, trying to coax prey fish closer and closer to them. Um, and so they're very kind of will o' the wisp kind of vibes to them. And I think that we could kind of have that kind of thing going on in the deep water as well, and make it a really spooky kind of place, where we have this final dungeon crawl. Um, Also, it would be just incredibly quiet because the while while sound moves much faster through water than it moves through air, it also makes it one, impossible for you to tell the direction that a sound is coming from, and two, the sound gets sort of out of earshot very quickly. And so while sounds will travel a great distance, you won't be able to hear the distinctions in them, in most cases there. Um, and Yeah, so I just making it a deep water environment, so it's dark and quiet and close and ominous, and then we have these little bits of bioluminescence that kind of tempt you into different places. Um, is a vibe that I think is cool and creepy and chilling, and I would really like to play an adventure in there. So that's kind of where I was thinking that we could go with this. Jonathan was added. I was just about to bring up bioluminescence. It fits well with the the Lovecraftian aboleth vibes. It does. I think so too. And then mentions aquatic undead. Yeah, I mean, I think undead are a staple of almost every adventure that I make. I like undead as baddies. I like to toss them in there, and I certainly don't want to shy away from using them in this one as well. Um, but we can get even more creative than just aquatic undead too. We can have all kinds of aquatic creepy crawlies down there, um, and and because we can have the undead from all of the mages that were there that had died, and then we can have all the animal life that moved in, and then we can have any sentient life perhaps that moved in, you know, deep water Sahuagin or what have you. Um, that could be really cool. Uh, so yeah, so that's some really good stuff for our find here. So why don't we come over to our find here and start um, skeletal merfolk. I like where your head's at. I like that one, Jonathan. Yeah, yeah, we could definitely have some of those in there. Let's capture this. So this is good for our find section here. So let's go ahead and do one that is uh, our, let's see here, artifact dungeon crawl brainstorming. Um, Deep water dungeon. Uh, Lightless, quiet, close. Well, I was gonna say claustrophobic instead of just close there. Let's see here, filled with undead and creatures of the deep. Bioluminescence. And I still managed to misspell that. There we go. Come on. There we go. Bioluminescence. Tempts explorers into ambushes and traps, or toward lost treasures long hidden. Yeah, we want it to be a spooky, uncomfortable place that chills the spines of those who explore it. Also, skeletal mermaids. I don't want to forget that. Merfolk. Say merfolk. That's better. Cool. All right. Yeah, so that's kind of where where I kind of want this to end up, is I really want it to be a spooky, deep water kind of environment. Let's see. Jonathan says, inland sea name idea. Name it after the head of the drowned mage order and add tiers. Example, Ilmar's tiers. Okay. Yeah, that's an idea. That would give us a little bit of flavor in there too. Yeah. What should we name? Yeah. Let's see here. Inland sea. We're gonna say TK names tiers. Cool. Yeah, we'll figure out what the head of that order's name is. Or another significant NPC we'll come up with, potentially. And give it a name. But I like the, so and so's tiers. I think that's good. I think that's I like that naming style. All right, so let's jump back here a minute then, and let's go back to our Go brainstorming page. So we kind of know we know where the artifact is going to be found. Now, how would our characters go about finding that place, finding out about it in the first place, and then finding their way to it? Right. We need to think of a variety of potential clues and leads that we can use to fill out our outline. So let's start with some leads and clues ideas. Just kind of rough stuff to start with here. So, there's always the lost tomes with information about about the history of this world. So we could do lost tomes with lore, clues. We could do tales from sailors of the inland sea. Let's see here. We could do with intercepted communications from faction members searching for the artifact. Let's see here. What other kinds of clues could we come up with? You do folklore. Which is kind of to along the lines of tales, but this could be other kinds of folklore. Folklore and stories. Let's see here. Jonathan says word of mouth seems like a great way to handle this. It allows for incomplete information or red herrings. Yeah, yeah. I am. I'm not a big fan of putting in deliberate red herrings when we do this kind of thing, just because I find that your players are going to come up with their own red herrings all on their own. They're going to find their own erroneous information that they, just chomp onto and won't let go of for until they've beat it to death. And so let them do that work. But occasionally, if you got a really sharp group who does really well with clues and mysteries and that kind of thing, absolutely toss in some red herrings, um, and to liven it up a little bit. Let's see here. Yeah, word of mouth is definitely good. Um, maybe there's some archaeological clues that we could find. Um, you know, I've had for a long time the idea for an NPC, this specific NPC that I've always wanted to put in something, and I've never quite found a thing that it was satisfying to put him in. I've worked him in other stuff, and it's never quite really kind of hit. And I think this might be a good world for him. I have the idea of a metallic dragon, um, whose horde is effectively he builds model ships, um, except that they're life size. Like he goes through collecting old ship parts from the bottom of the ocean, and rebuilds these old ships in his lair, and that's his collection. And it's all nautical theme kind of stuff. And so, you know, this might be a world where that's kind of a character that might be a good potential ally. We've done a lot of kind of dark stuff in here. We might have one that's a little bit lighter. Um, I don't know. We'll have to think. Have to think about that because that is a little light compared to a lot of the stuff in this world. Um, but it could fit, and that could be somebody who could offer up some of these clues um, uh, from some of these historical clues, these archaeological clues specifically. The idea behind archaeological clues meaning like stuff that they find that the characters kind of find dug up as part of their investigations when they I don't know, maybe go invade some other excavation sites from various factions, or as they learn about this stuff from while they're in towns. Um, all options we could go with here. Right now, I'm just trying to come up with a broad list that we can work with here to spark our ideas because we've got a couple layers of this that we want to work with, and we want as much variation in here as possible. Um, uh, I'm gonna add to Tales from Sailors. I'm gonna say sea shanties as well. Maybe there's clues and old songs uh, that get sung at various taverns. Because wouldn't that be cool, right? If we wrote a couple sea shanty, wrote a sea shanty or whatever that keeps popping up wherever the characters go, and then they realize at some point that that's got one of the clues that they need in it, something they've been hearing from the beginning of the campaign. Um, it's a little bit more work, but it could be a lot of fun. Um, so maybe something along those ideas. Um, hmm. Jonathan Frost says, sea shanties, yes. Give the bard something to do other than thirsting after. Yeah, yeah, right? Make song a part of this. I think about and add to that they throw into the world to give it a little bit of spice, and it turns out that it's actually a vital bit of information that's been lurking there, just sort of out of sight. Um, I think that could be fun, and sea shanties aren't shouldn't be all that hard to write, right? I say that, and we're gonna find out that they're incredibly difficult, but why not? Let's just do things. You can just make stuff. Why not? All right. So let's see here. What else? Oh, what other kinds of? Maybe there's some physical clues that we can, some more physical clues that they can find. Um, maybe some tool proficiency clues. Proficiency clues. And by that I mean like we can get into some straight up Sherlock Holmes kind of stuff here, and you know, have things that could be analyzed with specific tool proficiencies. That characters that have those proficiencies might be able to investigate and learn more about, or maybe they could track down people who have those proficiencies and learn that information. Um, right down to kinds of sediment and soil. Uh, you know, uh, Clues about fossils and what have you that can be built around that. All kinds of stuff that we could layer in there as we're looking for something that's hidden and been lost to history. Um, what else could we do? What else? So this begs the question: has anybody found this before? I don't know. Has anybody found the artifact previously? Because if they have, well, then somebody knows where to find it, and that gives us another kind of clue. So let's write that. Let's put that down. Has anyone found the artifact before? Begs the question: if they found it before, why haven't they used it? Well, maybe they couldn't bring themselves to make that decision of the ultimate dilemma, right? Of they couldn't bring themselves to decide whether or not to destroy the domain of dread or whether to open it up. Um, and so they put it, they left it alone. Um, they turned back. Hmm. Um, we're gonna call this a guide clue because this would be a guide character if they exist. Um, hmm. That's really got me thinking. Ooh, what if? Because we talked previously about having some other adventurers that have been kind of sucked into this. You know, what if you've got a group of just emotionally broken adventurers who know this secret? They know uh, where the artifact is, but they don't want to tell anybody because they know that it could mean the demise of everybody in that domain of dread. Um, uh, yeah, it could be the demise of literally anybody, everybody in that domain of dread. Um, that's that's an idea. Sir Jonathan says, could the artifact have a personal cost that a level 0 or a low level person cannot fulfill? An XP cost, a temporary ability score reduction? It absolutely could. It absolutely could. And having there be a cost to use it is almost always a good idea. Um, let's see here. Why would they leave it behind? Let's see here. We said can't make the necessary choice, can't use the artifact themselves. Either way, it gives us a reason for them to have that information and be reluctant to pass it on. Huh. All right, well, this is a good list of clues here. Um, I think, uh, yeah, I think this is a good place to kind of put a pin in it for the evening here. Um, so why don't we go ahead and wrap up for the night, and we will pick up again next week. And actually, I've got a question for you all. You know, I've been doing the Wednesday live streams that have been a little bit more kind of just chit chatty. Do we want to continue on with some of those, or would we prefer to keep working on this on Wednesdays as well? What are your thoughts? Having kind of those open TTRPG discussions, or continuing to work on our adventure on Wednesdays as well. I'd love to hear what your thoughts are on that. Um, I kind of go back and forth on it, my own personal opinion. Um, so let me know what you think. Drop your thoughts in the chat on that. I really appreciate it. And thank you again for joining me. Again, we'll pick up again next week, so that'll be the 10th of February. Same, bat time, same bat channel. And so thank you all for joining me again, and I will see you there. Night, everybody.